What is up, my friends? Welcome to Flippin' Bats. A lot is going on in the game of baseball. We are getting closer and closer and closer to pitchers and catchers reporting. Dodgers and Cubs pitchers and catchers report in just a couple days into this week because obviously they're starting over in Japan earlier than everybody else. So they report soon. And then we're about 10-ish days. I always think of Valentine's Day as the day pitchers and catchers report, but we're less than 2 weeks away from all pitchers and catchers reporting. Baseball is around the corner. It's here. It all starts this month. Everybody will be reported later this month. And we currently still have a lot of question marks, a lot to talk about. Alex Bregman, a big final domino. Where will he go? Pete Alonso, where is he going to go? A lot came up in baseball this week, including perhaps the best umpire in baseball, Pat Hoberg, at least in terms of balls and strikes, the best umpire in baseball, Pat Hoberg, has been fired for a gambling situation that is tricky. And we're going to talk all about that. Jim Edmonds' situation with the St. Louis Cardinals. Jim Edmonds has been in the booth for the Cardinals and just putting them on absolute blast over the last couple of days. We're going to talk all about that, his quotes, what he said specifically, and then Alex Bregman. We'll talk about him. Will he go to the Tigers? Will he go back to the Astros? Will he go to the Cubs? Where do I think he's going to go? The Tigers signing Jack Flaherty, and then some fan questions at the end, which we have some good ones today. Who's the Dodgers' biggest threat in the NL? Where will Alonso sign? And the Boras situation. A couple of years in a row now, Scott Boras clients are signing later and later and later into the offseason and really into spring training. So is there an issue with those Boras guys? We honestly, a lot to talk about. As I've started every show for the last couple of weeks, last month or so, is the same way I've started my day pretty much by opening up Twitter and saying that today is a great day for the Detroit Tigers to sign Alex Bregman. But we're going to talk about that in a little while. Let's start with this umpire situation. Pat Hoberg fired for a gambling situation. You hear that coming down. Couple thoughts go through my head. Oh, was he gambling on baseball? That would be really bad. Was his influence on the game affecting games? That would be really bad. If not, do I really care? Let's talk about it. Let's break it down. So, the timeline of events, as we've learned through the official Major League Baseball investigation, shows that he shared a gambling account with a friend of his. The MLB investigation showed that he shared the betting account with a friend who did bet on baseball. Pat Hoberg himself did not bet on baseball, but there were deleted texts which were integral to the investigation. He met this friend at a poker tournament in 2014. In 2019, that friend opened a legal account when sports betting in Iowa became legal. He opened an account, and then Hoberg started asking him to place non-baseball bets for him. That friend ended up giving Hoberg his username and password so that he could directly place bets. So this gets tricky. Hoberg was not placing bets on baseball through his shared account. So in my head, knowing this, I start thinking, okay, we're in this weird, as I see it, we're in this weird gray area, right? There's an account. The account is betting on baseball. Hoberg himself is not betting on baseball. We're in this gray area. Should really, like, are we really, do we need to fire this guy? But then you learn that there were 8 bets placed involving 5 games that Hoberg was umpiring, either umpiring directly or had responsibility for replay that day. To me, that's where this gray area pushes a little too far. The deleted text, knowing he was doing something wrong, his friend, his clear close friend that he met at the tournament in 2014, but they go golfing, they're close friends. His friend betting on games that Hoberg was umpiring, and then texts being deleted. Now there's no evidence that shows that any calls were influenced And then starting in February of 2024, so last year, right around this time, MLB opened up an investigation into Hoberg when he opened an account in his name. So that started an investigation. And then he was fired on May 31st of last year, but then appealed the process, which lasted until now, which they upheld their decision, which the decision is that he is fired from being an umpire for Major League Baseball. So a lot going on here. My initial thoughts when I saw this come out were, okay, I think the main beats of the situation are that he shared an account with a friend. He didn't bet on baseball, but that friend through the same account did bet on baseball. And I think, okay, slippery slope. Let's investigate how involved he was in games and did he influence anything? And then you hear no. But then the fact I do get it. You can't bet. You can't have an account that you're involved in betting on games that you are involved in. You can't. So I think my initial thought was, who cares? Tell me two things. Was he betting on was he betting on baseball? The answer to that is no. And then tell me another thing. Was the other friend betting on games that Hoberg was involved in and his calls were being influenced? Well, that answer is no as well. He was betting on games that Hoberg was involved in, but we don't directly know if Hoberg had knowledge of that. Maybe some of the deleted texts discuss that, which is why I get it. You have to lay down the law. You can't allow, it's a slippery slope. Gambling on sports, gambling is becoming a huge part of this world, the sports world. It is. And you have all of these places that are big partners of the league. FanDuel's a massive league partner. The regional sports networks have changed to FanDuel Sports Network. So it's a big part of it. And the league is laying down the law saying, look, we can't allow our own to have any involvement in games that they are involved in or the sport that they are involved in. In this situation, they laid down the law and said, this is too close. You're too close to it. You shared an account that bet on baseball, specifically bet on 5 different games that you were involved in. That's too close. Pat Hoberg fired, decision upheld, and started last February, decision upheld the beginning of February this year. It all took about a year. But big deal in the baseball world, I guess. I say that because if this was Angel Hernandez, I think everybody'd be like, all right, get him out of here. Can't do that. But Pat Hoberg, perfect game. Perfect game as an umpire. Best balls and strikes umpire in the game of baseball. He's gone. Too close to betting. I get it. Another person gone. Jim Edmonds. Lot of Jim Edmonds, St. Louis Cardinals controversy over the last couple of days. Jim Edmonds was in the booth last year and was a guy from listening to Cardinals games that wasn't afraid to put his thoughts out there. Whether it be good or bad for the organization, he wasn't afraid to call out bad play, to call out a lack of hustle, to call out the organization, to give props to the organization, to give props to a good play. He just called it as he sees it, and as he sees it is one of the greatest center fielders that the game of baseball has seen, in my opinion. Certainly, defensively, we know him as a top 5 defensive center fielder of all time, and maybe that's being too loose, maybe even higher than that, but offensively as well. One of the top center fielders in the game of baseball. Called it as he sees it. Well, the organization announced that he wasn't going to be back in the booth this year. And then Jim Edmonds goes on a radio show, 45-minute radio interview, and has a lot of words to say. Essentially, the words are that the culture has changed, everything as he knows it has changed, and this organization is going downhill because of it. Here's the quote, the big quote that everybody's discussing. I haven't gone really down in spring training the last couple of years. It's not fun anymore. They don't make you feel like you're wanted. Indoors in the inner circle, it's just not the same. It's not the same organization. It's not fun to be around, and they make it pretty obvious. Even the security guards, like, hey, it might not be a good time. I'm like, fine with me. I don't need to be in there. If you don't want me to tell your pitchers that they're tipping their pitches or that this guy's pulling off, I don't really give two shits about it. So he says that. And he also goes on to say that I don't know, it's the culture, the atmosphere. COVID was a perfect excuse to cut ties with all the extra fat, and it just continued, and it's been like that ever since. If you see each other in the hallways, it's literally just like, "Hey, how you doing? How's the fam?" and that's it. See you next month. It's weird. And he says since COVID, the culture there with the Cardinals has just been weird. The Cardinals organization was the staple of consistency. The longest playoff run, the longest consecutive stretch of making the playoffs in baseball that obviously came to an end a couple years ago, but just a staple of consistency. They're going to win. They're going to have a chance to win a World Series, but they are going to be in the playoffs every single year. And that started changing in my eyes, in my mind, and Jim Edmonds, he says around COVID, they use that as an excuse. In my mind, when Mike Schilt ends up getting fired, Cardinals, pretty good baseball team, good team. Mike Schilt, good manager. Next thing you know, he's out the door. He's emotional about it. He's upset. He's confused. And you start hearing, well, he's out the door because he wasn't just this shill to the organization where he was just passing along the good word, the analytics from up top and doing whatever they wanted to do, whatever the numbers on a piece of paper say that he should do. So he's fired. He wanted to put his feel on things too much. So bring in Ollie Marmol, who apparently just does what he's told from the upper office. And then everything with Wilson Contreras and bringing him over and then trying to change his catching habits. And I don't know, everything with Wilson Contreras has just been weird. So you have this organization that's the staple of consistency, and then things just start changing. And they start, in my opinion, going too heavy analytically and really just losing a feel for what made the St. Louis Cardinals for so long. The culture. You bring guys in, you work hard, you play the game hard, you do things the right way. Well, the right way for the Cardinals, I think, started shifting from every reason they've had success over the last few decades to analytics. So you bring in a new GM that started in 2017. This GM graduated from Notre Dame with a degree in mathematics, said he wanted to get into baseball, and started sending his draft evaluations to teams. Mozeliak responded, gave him a job. Next thing you know, you have this math guy in the organization, which if you look around, we started to see a lot of that. And I get frustrated here because what I really think this is, the teams that go so far down an analytics path is teams that are cutting corners and really just at the heart of it wanting to be cheap. Okay, why are we going to go out and spend a ton of money on player X when these numbers show this guy's pretty close, and maybe analytically we should actually go for a guy like this guy for half the cost? Bullshit. Baseball's been this way forever. You bring the best players in, the players that you believe in, and put the best product out on the field. And now we see a couple of these organizations going too far down that route. I have a very strong opinion. Everybody loves the movie Moneyball. I don't like it. It pisses me off. Moneyball doesn't work. It didn't work in the movie. They're all like, yeah, rah, rah, Moneyball. Look at the Oakland A's. They didn't win the World Series that year. They got their doors blown off. But they make it seem like this team was like this revelation. And look how good they are despite not spending any money. And Moneyball, yeah, you know what? They were a good team. They ended up getting to the playoffs. They had that magical run, but they weren't good enough to win a World Series. Moneyball, analytics in its own self isn't good enough to win you a World Series championship. Let's talk about the Tampa Bay Rays. Really, they head down that sort of new age Moneyball route, which is heavy analytics. They're always good, but they're never good enough. So I hate this. There is a place in baseball for analytics. There absolutely is. But there has to be this combination of feel and baseball minds surrounded by a group of people that are willing to dive in on the numbers and see, okay, like I love the analytics. I love that I can see that this guy doesn't hit this pitcher well or this pitch. I want to know that as a hitter. What does this pitcher throw? What do I struggle with? How is he going to try and exploit that? How can I work on it? The shift, where we should play guys. There's such a use for baseball analytics to be for analytics to be involved in baseball, but it can't be the end all be all. And the organizations that have made analytics the end all be all are struggling because of that. The Miami Marlins, the St. Louis Cardinals now. I mean, the list honestly goes on and on and on, but I think analytics have been used as this route to essentially be cheap, if I'm being completely honest. And this guy comes in that wants to be involved in baseball. He's a math guy, and now he's the GM, and everything's been changing right in front of our eyes. Everything with the St. Louis Cardinals. And Jim Edmonds is tired of it and called it out and just said the culture's been whack. It sucks. The culture started shifting during COVID. They don't invite us anymore to spring training. It's a completely different environment. If I'm the St. Louis Cardinals, if I'm somebody that invites people to spring training, if I'm the GM, what is the world in which you don't want Jim Edmonds there? Talking to your outfielders, talking to your hitters. What I can't fathom that. And to me, that's a shift culturally from the organization saying these old guys, they don't get what we're doing. They don't get it. We're going down an analytics route. They don't like that route. Let's keep them away from what we're doing. What you're doing doesn't work. It has to be a combination of guys that get it, guys that have feel, guys that understand, and guys, those same guys that are willing to appreciate and understand and use numbers and analytics where it's advantageous to them. And when you go too far down that route and you completely object to the game and feel and the past and just having a knowledge of the game and okay, maybe we should keep this pitcher in because he's got it today. He's got it. I don't care if the numbers say third time through the lineup, he really struggles. Sure, keep that in the back of your head, but no, he's different today. He's got something going on. He's given up one hit. He's dominating. Let's not pull him. I keep going back to the Blake Snell situation with Kevin Cash and the Rays in the playoffs. Kevin Cash, in that day, ruined what could have been a historic Blake Snell performance. Changed everything. But that's the whole thing I'm talking about. When you dive too far down the analytics route, which I believe the Cardinals are doing, and I think Jim Edmonds believes the Cardinals are doing, things don't work out. It needs to be a combination. Jim Edmonds did go on to say, I love Ollie, who's the current manager. I love the DeWitts, the owners. I have so much respect for Mo, the president of baseball ops. GM not named. Gersh not named. The mathematics guy that comes in from Notre Dame doesn't talk about him, keeps talking about the other guys and how he likes them, he has respect for them, but the GM is not named. Culture has changed there in St. Louis. Jim Edmonds calls it out, calls it for how he sees it, and I can't say that I disagree with him. It's clear, it's obvious. But this Jim Edmonds situation has been very interesting over the last couple days. Let's talk current events and exactly what we're seeing with free agency with this offseason. The Detroit Tigers, who I have been begging to sign somebody, have signed Jack Flaherty, bringing him back. He was there last year with the Tigers, and it will now be back in that rotation with Tarek Skubal. You got Tarek Skubal at the top, best pitcher in baseball, in my opinion. Now Jack Flaherty slots in there as a number 2. You got Reese Olson, Alex Cobb, and then some form of Jackson Jobe, who I think is going to be a stud, but will he start the year in the rotation? I don't know. Jackson Jobe, Casey Mize, but Jack Flaherty signs a 2-year deal worth $35 million. Nothing crazy. I'm surprised Jack Flaherty didn't get more than that. Yusei Kikuchi is older and didn't have the success that Jack Flaherty had last year and got more years and more higher AAV. I don't know. Really good deal for the Detroit Tigers to get Jack Flaherty in-house and add him to a rotation that I think is Sneaky, really good. Really good, actually. I don't. A lot of people don't know about Jackson Jobe. Jackson Jobe's going to be an absolute stud. I like the addition of Alex Cobb, an older vet in the rotation that can be good and get some innings for you. Reese Olson was good last year, but a 1-2 of Tarek Skubal and Jack Flaherty. Jack Flaherty had a sub-3 ERA with the Detroit Tigers last year until he got traded over to the Los Angeles Dodgers. When that trade happened, I hated it. I said, "What are we doing?" I was wrong. I ended up I backtracked and said I was wrong there. You traded Jack Flaherty. You got some pieces in house that I like. Sweeney, you bring in Sweeney. I like the pieces they got, and now you bring Jack Flaherty right back. Great, it all worked out. Okay, I was wrong. So that deal happens, but here's why I get frustrated with the Detroit Tigers. Again, I like the rotation, but here's why I get frustrated with the Detroit Tigers. You can look at the payroll right now and see that the Detroit Tigers have the highest payroll in the AL Central. But that's deceiving. They got 3 1-year deals, 2 2-year deals. This is what they're doing is not building. It's plugging holes temporarily. It's continually for the last 2 3 years plugging these holes with 1 or 2 year deals with these older veteran players. They're the top payroll in the AL Central, but 17th in baseball, and that's because of a Javi Baez contract that's brutal. Until they make a move like signing Alex Bregman, I can't take what the Detroit Tigers are doing seriously. Sign Alex Bregman right now. You won 86 games last year. You've added Gleyber Torres, Tommy Kahnle, and now Jack Flaherty. Alex Bregman makes this a fantastic offseason and makes the Detroit Tigers an American League champion contender. If the Detroit Tigers sign Alex Bregman right now, they are immediately a top 5 team in the American League. Maybe top 4. Yankees, Astros. The American League is wide open. Yankees, Astros, Orioles, in the AL West. I think the Rangers are going to be much better this year. But top 4 or 5 team in the American League. If you sign Alex Bregman right now, you won 86 games last year. You made the playoffs. Your team has gotten better this offseason, but you continually plug holes. Open up the checkbook, sign a long-term deal for a cornerstone star on your team in Alex Bregman that knows how to win in October. He's a winner. He plays great defense. He'll hit you a bunch of doubles in Comerica Park. Sign Alex Bregman. That's why I get frustrated with the Detroit Tigers. It's all this, it's smoke and mirrors with these deals they make. I do like the deals they've made, but they haven't made that big move. They haven't. They haven't made the big splash move yet that I think needs to be made to put them over the top. That's why I get frustrated. This rotation I think is good. Good to bordering on really good. I'm not going to say great, but Tarek Skubal, best in baseball. Tarek Skubal, Jack Flaherty, Reese Olson, Alex Cobb, Jackson Jobe, Casey Mize. I like it a lot. Offensively, they're still missing something. And I'm not going to say that Alex Bregman's going to come in and hit 300 with 30. He's not going to do that. But he's going to come in. He's going to play a great third base. He's going to hit over 250 with a bunch of doubles, and he could hit you 300 in the playoffs. He's a playoff gamer. I like Alex Bregman a lot, and this is why I get frustrated with the Tigers. All of their moves have seemed to me like smoke and mirrors since the Javi Baez deal that they got burnt on. And I think that deal has scared them. I think that deal has scared Chris Ilitch out of doing more. And I think all of these other deals are just plugging holes temporarily. And I would like to see that end. But Alex Bregman is still out there. I think he's going to be the first domino of these final series of moves. I do think I think it's going to happen soonish. Maybe I'm crazy, but he did have the earlier reported deal of 6 years, $156 million out there. That was from the Astros. He obviously didn't want to sign that. What else do we know? Jim Bowden did come out and say, I think the Tigers have the best offer on the table, perhaps. I'm just not so sure that's where he wants to go. Um, he's a Boris client, so is Pete Alonso. We've seen this from Boris clients in the past where they just start signing later and later and later into the offseason, which I have a thought here when it comes to Boris clients, but that is a question that I got from the fan question. So I'll talk about that in a minute. But the Cubs are in play. The Astros seemingly have that deal on the table. I think there are better deals out there. If I had to really guess what's going on, that Astros deal is out there, 6 years, 156 million. He wants more. He's getting more from places that he might not necessarily want to go. Um, I think he'd rather end up back in Houston than in Detroit, if I'm being honest. I think Detroit needs to do a little more to get him, which I think they should do. Go that extra year. Give him that give him that opt out. This is what I think the Tigers should do. High AAV, opt out after 1 or 2 years. Give him those same years, right? Let's use that earlier reported deal as a baseline. 6 years, 156 million from the Astros. Give him that 6 years. Let's go to 175 million and give him those opt outs. Give him an opt out after one and give him an opt out after two. I think that's what you're going to have to do. And why are we not? Why are we not? Reportedly the Tigers offer is better. So like what I don't know. I just get frustrated because of everything I just said with the Tigers and how they've handled things. Let I, Mike Ilitch, Mr. I, would not allow this to happen. I'm telling you, Alex Bregman would be a Detroit Tiger already if Mr. I was in charge. But Chris just doesn't care the same about the Detroit Tigers. He doesn't. And it's frustrating. I do think Scott Harris reportedly has built his offseason around the interest in Alex Bregman. And I really think the holdup, if I had to break it down, is just a difference in a year or two and some millions in there. And I think the Detroit Tigers should do it because they're already on the cusp. You're an AL favorite, a top 4 or 5 AL favorite if you sign Alex Bregman. You have a great rotation. You have the best pitcher in baseball. Add to that team. But I said this the other day, and I mean this. And I know Astros fans probably see my tweet every single day. Today's a great day for the Detroit Tigers to sign Alex Bregman and get frustrated, right? I'm a Tigers guy. I'm an Astros guy. I'm an Alex Bregman guy. He's a friend of mine. So it's an interesting situation, but I started saying that because I feel like he's the perfect fit for the Detroit Tigers. And originally, I didn't feel there was a window. I actually started saying this right around that time when they brought in Isak Paredes, and then they were really interested in Christian Walker. To me, that says the door is closed on Alex Bregman. So I started saying, Tigers, get it done. Well, then that window starts creeping open a little bit, and the Astros say, we are still interested. Jose Altuve would move to left field. There's a way in which we can do this. Our offer still stands. So then I start thinking, well, okay. So I still want the Detroit Tigers to sign him, but I said this the other day. If the Tigers don't sign Alex Bregman, it is a failure of an offseason. The window is there. Get it done, and if they don't, if the Astros sign Alex Bregman, they win the World Series. Bold statement, I know. Bookmark it. I love Christian Walker. I think he's going to be an MVP finalist in the American League. I think Isak Paredes over at third base with the Crawford boxes is going to run into a bunch of homers. I think you still have Yordan Alvarez. I think you still have a really good pitching staff. I think this Astros team is built to be really good. Add Alex Bregman back, I think they're a World Series team. Okay. but I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if they want to open up the checkbooks more than they already have. I think the window, the path for the Detroit Tigers to sign him and to win is right in front of them. That's why I think the Detroit Tigers need to sign Alex Bregman. All right. Some fan questions before we finish up, and we have a lot of good ones and ones that tie into things I want to talk about, including Pete Alonso, including Scott Boras. But this first one comes from Michael Cano, who asks, "Who's the Dodgers' biggest threat in the National League?" First off, Michael, thank you for that question. Obviously, Dodgers are a big-time favorite to win everything, but it's baseball. There's a lot of teams that can get in the way, specifically in the National League. Uh, when I first saw that question, the team that keeps coming to my mind is the Atlanta Braves, and a team that hasn't done didn't do a ton in the offseason and until about a week or so ago really didn't get any better aside from the obvious additions. It's the obvious additions with the Atlanta Braves are their guys, their superstars on each side of the ball coming back, and Ronald Acuna Jr. and Spencer Strider. But then you add a Jurickson Profar to the outfield. Next thing you know, your lineup is nasty. So I really like their offense. I think their pitching staff is going to be good. Losing Max Fried hurts, but I think it's going to be a good rotation. I think the Braves are going to be really, really good. So we can really, if we go outside of the NL West, I think the D-backs will be good. I'm disappointed in the Padres offseason. So I'm going to say the Dodgers' biggest threat in the National League is those three NL East teams. The Braves being at the top of that, the Phillies, and the Mets. I think all of those teams will be really good. And I think any of those three teams can beat the Dodgers. They're going to play in a best of 5 or a best of 7 game series in October. The Dodgers are going to have to face Spencer Strider in a game and a great offense. I mean, to me, any of those three teams can beat the Dodgers in October. So I will say Braves, Phillies, Mets are the biggest threat to the Dodgers in the National League. Thank you for that question. Next up, where will Pete Alonso sign? This comes from Jake Metz. I have continually thought that Pete will end up back with the Mets. And as the offseason goes, I more and more am going away from that. I would say I about a month ago thought it became 50-50 with the Mets. As the offseason goes longer and longer, like his deal, he's losing more and more leverage, I think. And it's interesting to say that because as you go, teams that have holes are, more and more willing to sign a guy. I think the best fit for Pete Alonso is still the New York Mets. I think the Mets need him. So if I had to guess right now, I'm going to say Pete Alonso signs with the Mets, but I think the deal looks nothing like he wants it to, or Scott Boras wanted it to. I think we're maybe looking at a short-term deal with high AAV. But if I think Mets or Blue Jays, I know the Reds were thrown in there. I would love that move for the Reds. I think that would be fantastic. Do they do it? I don't know. I think that top of the list looks like Mets or Blue Jays. I think the Mets have a bigger need and a better fit for him. Blue Jays would have to shift a lot of things around, but they're reportedly interested. Where will Pete Alonso sign? I will say that at the beginning of the offseason, I would have said 95% chance it's the New York Mets. A couple weeks later, I would have said 75%. About a month ago, I said this is looking like 50-50. Today, I don't know. I feel even less good about it than when I felt 50-50, but I still think it's the fit. So I think momentum will pick back up, and I think these teams are each camp is holding out and waiting on each other. Who's going to blink first? And I think it's going to get to a point where they come together and just say, look, all right, we'll give you a little bit more money. We're going to go less years than you want, and we're gonna sign you. And Steve Cohen's gonna get that done and pair Pete Alonso and Juan Soto in a lineup, and it's gonna be a pretty dang good baseball team. Jake Metz, thank you for the question. I will say Mets, but I don't feel great about it. Last question comes from Cult of Baseball. How much of an issue is Scott Boras guys not getting signed until spring training? Jordan Montgomery seemed to fire Boras over it last year, and now Bregman and Alonso are still out there with a week until pitchers and catchers report. Here's my thoughts on it. I have some thoughts on the Scott Boras situation as a whole, but when it comes to guys not signing until spring training, in my opinion, it's a much bigger deal for pitchers. Spring training is for pitchers to build up and ramp up and get ready. Obviously, hitters need that time to get adjusted and live BP and then games and get some at bats. I will forever remember in spring training talking to Ian Kinsler and him saying, I know the exact number of at bats that I need for my eyes to be ready. And he's a veteran, vet guy. He had been around for a long time at the time, and I just loved talking to him about baseball. But he knew. So it takes me, and I forget the exact number, but I want to say it's around 40, which seems high to me if I'm thinking about it for spring training. So maybe it was less. I just remember him saying, I don't need all of these games. I don't need all of these games. I know exactly the number of at-bats it takes for me to be ready, and then I'm good to go and ready to go up north. And I think hitters are that way. And the number's going to be different for all of them. But a hitter, like, you know what you need. You're just adjusting and getting your eyes back and getting your eyes adjusted back to seeing pitching and getting your timing and all of that down. But really, spring training is as long as it is because pitchers need to ramp up and ramp up and ramp up. So I think it's a bigger deal for pitchers to not sign until spring training or late spring training than it is for hitters. But yes, I think if I'm really breaking it down with Scott Boras, I think Scott Boras as an agent is the best guy for the A to A plus free agents. I think Scott Boras over the last couple of years has been doing a disservice for those players that are B to B plus players. The Alex Bregmans, the Pete Alonsos. I don't think he has the same leverage with those guys, and I don't think he's doing them any favors. I don't think Scott Boras is as good of an agent for the B plus free agents. I don't. I think Scott Boras coming out and saying, we're looking for a Prince Fielder type deal for Pete Alonso. That's not doing anybody any favors. That's great. I could come out of retirement right now as a career minor leaguer and have Scott Boras say, hey, Ben Verlander, we're looking for a George Springer type deal. He absolutely could say that, but it's like, what are we talking about? And I'm not saying I'm not saying Pete Alonso is that far away from Prince Fielder. I get the general realm, but I'm saying, like, you're just throwing words out at that point. You're just throwing words that it's just like everybody can see numbers. When Prince Fielder got that deal with the Tigers, he was younger than Pete Alonso, and his numbers were better than Pete Alonso, especially coming off the year that they both were. So it's just like, what? Now we're further away from a deal. That comp is ridiculous. Let's be realistic. You don't have the same leverage with Pete Alonso that you have with Juan Soto. You don't have the same leverage with Alex Bregman that you do with your other stars that are signing long-term deals. Superstars. I'm using superstars as an example. You don't have that same leverage. So I just get frustrated because I don't think you can't use the same tactic with Pete Alonso and Alex Bregman that you do with Juan Soto. You can't. And he is. And I think that's doing them a disservice. And I think that's why Jordan Montgomery fired Scott Boras last year. Because he's not Garrett Cole. But he went into that offseason treating him the exact same way as Garrett Cole, and it didn't work out. He went from coming off all the leverage in the world, in the World Series, got his team to the World Series. The Rangers don't win the World Series if it wasn't for Jordan Montgomery. And then he's starting games in the World Series and he's doing fantastic and he comes out as a free agent and Scott Boras lost all of that leverage for him. He lost so much money and so many years and all of his leverage and he fired Scott Boras over that. Because he treats Jordan Montgomery to teams just as he does to Garrett Cole. And I don't think you can treat everybody the same. I think he's a better agent for the A guys than he is the B and B plus guys. And I do think that's doing all of them a disservice. Last year, Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery. Snell was not good until he finally found it early to midway through the year and then was again probably the best pitcher in baseball from then on, one of. But it took him a while because he missed spring training. Jordan Montgomery, the same thing. So how much of an issue is Boras guys not signing? Bigger issue for pitchers than hitters, but it is an issue for everybody because I think Pete Alonso and Alex Bregman are losing leverage as we go and are now none. I don't think either of them are going to get the deal that they were hoping for or wanted. And maybe they might have gotten that early on in the offseason. But good question, Cult of Baseball. Thank you. Appreciate that. Good questions from everyone today. Thank you all. Fun episode. A lot to talk about. The Pat Hoberg situation is wild. The Jim Edmonds situation is, I get it. I've seen it with the Cardinals. I was pissed off when Mike Shildt got out the door there because I feel like Mike Shildt is a great manager and has some feel for the game, and they didn't like that. What that Cardinals office right now wants is for those baseball guys, those math guys to write the lineup. And to say, well, this is the numbers that say he should hit leadoff. This guy should be in the 9 hole. No. God, that pisses me off. There's a world for that, but it's not the end-all be-all. And I think the Cardinals have gone down the end-all be-all route, and Jim Edmonds called that out. Alex Bregman. It's a great day for the Detroit Tigers to sign Alex Bregman. Hope that happens here soon. But thank you all for listening. We are just a few days away from the first pitchers and catchers reporting to spring training. Under 2 weeks away from all pitchers and catchers reporting to spring training. And, a few weeks away from hitters and everybody reporting. And about a month and a half, almost under 2 months away from those first games in Japan and then opening day. It's all happening, my friends. 2025, the year of flipping bats. Can't wait for this year. I am so pumped up. It's going to be a great year for baseball, for the show, and just love you guys and love this community. So thank you all for listening, watching, wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple, Spotify. Please hit that follow, subscribe button. It is free to do so. Leave a 5-star review. And if you want to watch, you can watch every episode we do on our YouTube channel, Flippin' Bats Pod there. Every single episode comes out on video, which is where we put stuff on social media as well, at Flippin' Bats Pod on all of our social media. But thank you all for watching. We will be back soon. I have reached out to Jack Flaherty, so we're just trying to figure out when to get him on the show, which would be a lot of fun, but I do think that's going to happen. So in the next week or so, look out for that. But we'll be back soon, either way, with another episode of Flippin' Bats. But remember, until next time, my friends, find your bat and flip it. Peace.